So you started out in business, I understand, selling magazines as a teenager.
Right.
What's different about you? Why did you do that?
Well, I guess I was just curious. I would say it's two sides of a coin. On one side, I would say I was very curious about how to make some money and had to see the financial freedom as a teenager. Freedom, I was interested in that. On the other hand, I saw, it was not that difficult. It's really trying to organize things.
So later, you founded Hill House Capital Management yourself.
Right.
Alone, right?
Uh-huh.
How did you get the courage to do it? Why did you do that?
Well, I think a couple of things. One, I wanted to do something I'm passionate about. I think having sort of apply what I learned in an environment that fits where I want to go is very hard to go for work somebody. So why don't I just work, start a company and focusing on what I believe in back then was to investing in China's emerging technology companies and the businesses. Yeah. So I thought that was my passion. I wanted to do that, and the opportunity opens up. I got one investor.
I just think most young people today wouldn't think of starting. They can't imagine they could do that.
If you never know until you try.
Yeah. So it was you regarded it as a big gamble then, and you didn't know that you could do it.
Oh, I always kind of had the interest and confidence starting something. I tried actually a few other things before this. Some of them failed, some of them succeeded a bit. But in the end, I truly believe you have to be a doer. You can't just be a thinker. You have to get started. Something.
Well, I'm just academics are thinkers.
Yeah, well, you are doing by teaching. That's a different doer system. Yeah.
So you made it into a huge financial advisory company. And you have investors, are they from China exclusively, or are they from other countries as well?
Yeah, around the world, yeah.
Yeah, and so what is your philosophy? Do you follow a formula? Do you use personal judgment?
Very simple. You want to learn the philosophy, come here to School of Management, and also learn from across street at the Yale Endowment. That's where you learn the basics.
My students have started by taking my course online.
Right. That's that's the first step. to listen to your class is a good idea, but really it's about, I think at the end of the day it's about spotting those opportunities, applying common sense. Sometimes, common sense is hard to get by.
Now, a lot of people have the impression that markets are efficient, and that it's so competitive that you can't win at this game. But somehow you had confidence otherwise. Right. What gave you? Why didn't you believe this efficient market story?
Right. Oh, when I was at school here and was taught, market efficiency theory, but at the same time, it's a dynamic concept. There were so many conditions and assumptions on that market efficiency. And I think, the opportunity I spotted back then about China's investment opportunities was so big, was such a transitional economy that, that over time, actually, I developed my theory. Initially, I think, I would say, I thought myself as a value investing, as a conventional sense of value investing, which is more about discovering value. What are the value? Maybe that discovering value started from kind of cigarette bet, sort of deep value investing. Over time, I changed. I would say I'm more sort of not only about discovering value, but also about adding value, and also about investing in value not as a static concept, but a dynamic growth concept. So that's sort of my twist, if you will, on the sort of value investing
But is your twist related to your personal ability to judge people and business ideas?
Right, yeah. I think about myself not so much an investor in a way. So I think about I'm a kind of entrepreneur who happened to be an investor.
Well, you've been on the other side.
Right. So I was thinking, so that's really every time when I make a judgment, I'm not going through, to the Fab Forces and, all those static business school case. Instead, I was like, think about me starting that business. What's the essence of that business? What's the nature of that, the people behind the business? What are the drivers of his sort of ambition? What's, and trying to understand better from first principles, not necessarily from a formula. That's how I started.
But still, how did you get started? In the sense, you have to find investors who believe in you from the beginning.
Yeah.
How did you do that?
I was lucky enough. I got convinced David Swenson.
Well, you were that's an interesting story because you were one of his interns.
Right, that's right.
And in fact, you translated his book into Chinese.
That's right. His book was selling for $30 in the US. After my translation, sells for $5 in China. Okay. That was a lot of value added.
So you were telling the world how you were going to do it. And you had, right? So you are following something like the Swenson approach.
Yes, absolutely. I think in the end about that thinking about long-term orientation, that the focus on the equity, focus on the residual free cash flow of the nature of the business, and focusing on risk-adjusted returns. So that's what I learned from David. I mean, those are philosophies still very much the same core philosophy of what we do. But then I would say we combine that with actually a lot of Chinese philosophy. One thing I always talk about the Chinese Buddhism, we talking about, how do you do when thousands of drops of water, you only need one bottle. So how do you think about that focus? How do you think about there's sort of how do you win a conventional markets using unconventional thinking? That's Taoism thinking. There's also the thinking about, how do you be focused and also have peace of mind, don't get bothered by the market movement. There are a lot of those philosophies, I would say, combined with what I learned here at School of Management and with David Swenson. I would say those are forming the foundation of my investing philosophy.
You've been through some big market movements in China.
Right.
How did that make you feel? The market was going crazy. It must have seemed that way.
Right. Yeah. Oh, absolutely. I think that's exactly the opportunity, right? So when there's people chasing up and downs, when the volatility drives so much opportunity for long-term investors. So if you're long-term orientation, you should have an inherent advantage over other people. When I was asked actually to speak with the Chinese Fund Manager Association, they were talking about, they're like, Lei, we love what you do about long-term investing, but how do you make money, despite being a long-term investor? But that's the whole point, right? So like you want to be long-term because that's actually how you think you can make money.
But did you sell at the top in 2007?
I wouldn't necessarily know exactly, on like a whole portfolio because we're not market timer. Yeah. But we look at everything on bottom-up basis. We look at some of them get overvalued, then you would sell. Some of them actually, you hold on to them over a long period of time. You look at our top holdings on the public equity portfolio. We have been there for, I would say, 60, 70% of names that we owned in the first couple of years. And after 10, 11 years, we still own them.
But you said unconventional.
Yeah.
How do you make sure that you're unconventional? How do you know?
Right. I think, a conventional thinking in China is that first you have to do market timing well. You have to do sector rotation. So you always follow the trend because China changed so fast. You can't be a long-term orientation because there's just because the market changed so fast. Unconventional thinking is that actually we could be a long-term orientation and hold on to very few names, do a concentrated book instead of a very diversified investment portfolio. Those are unconventional.
Oh, no, you weren't as diversified as other funds.
No, I was not at all. I was, probably we own, 10, 20 as a core names. Those make them
and
vast
some of them,
majority.
like, was it JD?
JD was a private equity portfolio turned into a public equity portfolio, and some of companies like Gree and Media, the air conditioner company we own from the beginning. We own now 11 years, and they are still our top 5 holdings.
Anyway, I wanted to ask you about philanthropy.
Yes.
You are a philanthropist. Yale is very grateful for your gift.
Thank you.
What do you think? Is that something that's important to you in your lives? And are you different from other people in your emphasis? Is it part of your philosophy that does it combine well with other things you do?
I think it's a learning process for me. I think that's really obviously to me, education changed my life. And it's had such a strong touch on what I do on every day. So my wife and I, when we reflect on that, I say, oh, how can other people benefit from our experiences? Yeah. And so that's why we set up, school in China for underprivileged kids of vocational schools. That's why we give scholarship inside China. Now we actually set up the smaller libraries for schools in Southeast Asia and India, and that's why we did what we did at Yale. So I think the way to make a connection to the people who have similar situations, and at the same time, I think China is in a critical crossroad. Hopefully, there's a lot of first-generation entrepreneurs who made the money. Hopefully, by being an example in doing this, China could change to be, European-style kind of dynastic culture, to be much more about this open culture, so that helps with social mobility and help give people more chances. I think China is right now in this critical crossroad.
That's great to hear. You were giving the idea of evolving Chinese culture, and that somehow philanthropy was different in older China, right? There was philanthropy all along.
There were a lot of philanthropy in different ways and throughout the culture, throughout the Chinese civilization.
But maybe it had a qualitatively different, like more emphasizing to one's family or to one's caste?
Yeah, to one's communities, and also obviously to be connected to the sort of the communities, and there always been in the Chinese culture the Confucianism, always the belief of giving, and but I think the recent decades obviously had been very hard for the Chinese because of the economic difficulties. Now, the first generation entrepreneurs are shaping the Chinese culture. I think that by being a role model for people, a lot of people who sort of make the money and to say, oh, okay, there's a better way of using that money and to help the society. And I think that was a very rewarding experience.
So you say it was important for you to visit the United States here at Yale for some years. Is that an enriching experience?
Oh, absolutely. I enjoyed it so much. I learned, not only about the knowledge and the instruments of financial instruments, but also the philosophy, the thinking. That if you combine that with the sort of the Chinese philosophy, I think that makes perfect sense for me to form my investing philosophy as well as my life.
We're trying to, with Coursera, we're trying to give an opportunity for people to see many of our students are from other countries. What do you think about where the social media, the online experience is changing the world?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that actually in emerging markets, this could have even deeper sort of implications, because essentially you have the opportunity to leapfrog the traditional classroom, and the value added you could have to have world-class faculty and world-class teaching transcending the current system. And I think that given that most of the younger people in the emerging markets also, many of them now have smartphones that they have access to all those information. If somehow we can empower them, doesn't matter where they live in, suburb of Indonesia or India or China or Brazil, people can benefit from that knowledge dissemination, and really empower them to really try something much better for themselves. This would help with the social mobility, help giving people the chance to succeed.
So it sounds like you are talking about diversification into human capital.
Right.
a lot of people have, maybe you'll tell me whether you agree, a lot of people have traditional views about how to invest, and they think of, say, real estate as a sure bet, and they think of taking a finance course as something kind of secondary. But what do you think?
There's nothing better than investing in yourself and investing in education. And education investment over long run always produce the best compounding results that you could never imagine. I think that that's for sure the best investment you could ever make on yourself, on your friends and your relatives, on the society. I have a deep belief in that. I think there's we haven't even talked about externalities, right? Then we have a better educated society and that interact with each other can produce even more profound impact. I think so we're just at the beginning of the sort of the era that we can see how human capital can be harnessed better. I think there are two things going on. One is about there are two things that we should be mindful of. One is about technology change, artificial intelligence, would that replace human capital or not? Right. Secondly, about the sort of the knowledge gap or digital gap between different classes, socioeconomic classes of people, especially in places like emerging market where they don't have the same access for the people in suburb of Jakarta may not have the same access for the people in New Haven. So how do you bridge that gap? Because that actually, the digital gap actually got widened. So how do you bridge that gap? And also, how do you think about technology not only, not as a sort of a disfranchising factor, and actually as a equalizer to help bring people together? Those are things I'm very interested in.